everyone, welcome. Robin Dufault here, President 2020. And just to give you a few ground rules, I know a lot of you have already attended these town halls, but everyone will be muted. And then if you have any questions for Mayor Evans, you can use the chat function and she can answer them for you. So let me first introduce her. She is the mayor for the city of La Quinta, and she has served as mayor since 2014. Prior to that, she served on the council beginning in 2009. Linda is also the Chief Strategy Officer of Community Advocacy for Desert Care Network, which comprises the Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs, JFK Memorial Hospital in Indio, and the High Desert Medical Center in Joshua Tree. She has worked for the hospital's parent company, Tenet Healthcare, for 25 years. Linda received a bachelor's degree in communications, public relations from Cal State University, Fullerton. She holds 2 master's degrees, one in health administration and the other in gerontology, both obtained from the University of La Verne. She's on numerous boards, committees, agencies throughout the Valley, and quality of life is a key driver in how Linda measures success in her hospital outreach and her civic duty. Linda and her husband, Tim, have been married for nearly 25 years, and we welcome you, Mayor Evans.
Thank you. Please feel free to call me Linda. That works for me.
I've been told to call, I know a lot of the mayors, and I've been told to call him Mayor. But
what?
First, let me ask you.
We're in a formal setting. Listen, I'm
okay.
multiple. Let's just go with Linda, but appreciate that.
Thank you, thank you. Could you first please give us an overview of the current shelter-in-place guidelines for La Quinta?
Sure. La Quinta, fairly like the other cities in the Coachella Valley, are aligned and or somewhat obligated to comply with either the county and or the state requirements. For sheltering, we can go more strict, but we can't lessen unless the state and or county authorize us to do so. So I don't know if you're aware, but there was a health conference or press conference yesterday with the county health officer, basically renewing his executive order that expires today for the shelter-in-place, face mask, social distancing to align with Governor Newsom's sheltering-in-place ordinance to extend through June 19th. So I would say that the difference in La Quinta is where we are more strict in terms of that rule of social distancing is in our golf. We released the ability to play golf in our state about 2 weeks ago, and the only difference from the park and play regulations that were issued by the county is that we do require a single person per cart unless you live within the same household, and we don't allow any indoor or outdoor kind of seating area around the golf clubhouse. It's really very much get your lunch or meal and drink and move on. So that eliminates the kind of gathering component. Otherwise, we're fairly consistent with what you're seeing county and state.
Okay, great. Our realtors are considered essential. Mm-hmm. Does La Quinta have any restrictions on what a real estate agent is allowed to do when they are working?
Well, I would say, and thank God you're all essential workers, because that's helped, although the market hasn't cooperated with that component too much. But similar to a lot of the other cities, we're encouraging virtual as much as possible, virtual tours. We're encouraging electronic activity in any way, shape, or form. In terms of showing homes, if you have to do that, it's kind of a one person with 2 other people. It should be by appointment only. It's consistent, I think, with what you all are practicing in other cities. HOAs, they have to kind of make those arrangements as well with the seller to ensure that if their CC&R say something different than the general rules and guidelines, this applies both to occupied or vacant properties. So again, as much electronic, as much as non-gathering in offices, as much as by email, phone, digital signatures, those types of things. And for the most part, try to make those appointments and do a one person only. I do have a couple friends that are realtors that did arrange to show a house, and lo and behold, walked in the door and there was another realtor there, And so it's one of those, wait outside, take your turn, but the more that you all can communicate, the less it becomes noticeable, I would say, from an enforcement issue. So if everybody practices it nicely and abides, then that's when we don't have to look at taking steps to the next measure and completely prohibiting that, because we don't want to do that.
Okay, good. And you are on top of it with all of that, because that's exactly what we've been preaching. Are there any short-term rental restrictions in La Quinta?
Absolutely. And I've spoken to your group a number of times saying La Quinta loves short-term vacation rentals. We embrace them. We try to work with both the renters and the owners and the property management team to recognize your personal property rights. But during this COVID pandemic, we definitely have pretty much a moratorium or a ban on those, really indefinitely, but there are some exceptions. And we did move it to a 60-day or less, and it is for essential workers only based on the public health department's description. So what we've had to do is, once we did that kind of change, we still had, unfortunately, a lot of abuse. And when we were really trying to emphasize the shelter in place, we recognized that people weren't really essential. The entities coming in were still having big parties. So our hotline was definitely being utilized by the local neighbors who were saying, listen, our goal is to not have outsiders come in and spread this disease during this time frame. So we had to go to a pre-approval process. So we do allow essential stays, quarantine stays. If there's travel restrictions where somebody has been discharged because they're quarantined or recovering from COVID and they can't return to their primary residence and they need a place to stay, we've got some of those allowances, but that owner has to seek the city's permission in advance of it happening, so that we can truly define that it is essential, because we've still had people try to go under the radar. And believe me, the neighbors are pretty out and about right now trying to call out short-term rentals. And I know it's for safety reasons. And we have allowed some, for example, if you've kept up with some of the outbreaks, the skilled nursing facilities and assisted living areas, that congregate senior living seems to be a hot topic. And there were about a dozen positives identified at the Palms of La Quinta up on Sealy Drive, the facility up there. And we had employees that work there that also live in La Quinta saying, I'm not positive, but I was told I have to quarantine away from my family. So what can I do, or where can I rent, or where can I go? And for that example, we actually refer them to Homewood Suites, because most of the hotels right now also are only doing essential on a very small basis. And it's hit and miss in terms of compliance, but we recognize that it's difficult because this is an income source for so many. But until we have seen a flattening of the curve, we just need to continue that a little bit before we start bringing back that travel element.
And what are the COVID numbers for La Quinta right now?
They publish those every day on the county website. And as of last night and this morning, we've had 69 positive cases in La Quinta with one death. And that death occurred just over the weekend. So we're faring well. I think the county overall is faring well. The more we test, they're testing about 2,000 people a day in Riverside County in the multiple sites. So you're going to see the number of positives continue to increase. But we're looking at hospitalizations and people in the ICU. I say that from my hospital job now. We're looking at it. We can have a lot of positives, just like we may all carry a measles or chickenpox component, but it doesn't actually become symptomatic. There's probably so many people that have the COVID coronavirus entity within them, but they may not become symptomatic and may not end up in the hospital or the ICU or on a ventilator. So those numbers are remaining steady, which is optimistic for us.
Okay, good. You had mentioned hotels. They've been hit hard. There's been a lot of businesses, small businesses especially, that have been hit hard. Have any of them been reaching out to the city regarding help or assistance with SBA loans or any of the other help that's available?
Absolutely. We took an early stance as a city council in La Quinta and allocated $1.5 million out of our economic disaster fund. We have a reserve fund, And that 1.5 million is a small business loan program for storefront businesses in La Quinta in increments of $5, $10, $15, and $20,000. It's a no interest loan. It comes directly from the city, and there's an application online on our website. And basically, out of that 1.5 million, $500,000 of that is allocated towards restaurants in the city of La Quinta. All of the rules and information, but again, it's a 0% loan. They don't have to start paying it back for a year, and they've got 2 years to pay it. Do I see a question from Jeff, even though he's muted? Hold on. We do have probably 75 applications. Today's the last day to submit applications. However, my guess is the ad hoc committee will request an extension of that to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to complete the application that wants to do so. Short-term vacation rental property owners are not eligible for this. We are looking at those businesses that have been banned from doing business as a storefront, restaurants that are really solely looking at takeout, or those that really need rent covered for that time period that they're not allowed to work. Let's see, I'm hoping to receive, and I'm looking for a chat here. Let's see. Let me look at these chats. All right, so I have a question regarding comment from a Desert Sun article comparing leaving short-term rentals empty to the empty comparison between short-term rentals being empty and empty foreclosed homes of the last recession. What are the thoughts about short-term rentals being empty? I think definitely there's short-term vacation rental properties in La Quinta. We have over 2,000 that are largely not being used right now because they can't be. And we're hoping that does come back. I also see that we're going to see foreclosures probably, and you could tell me better than I can read those projections, that probably come September or October, November, we may start seeing some of those foreclosures happen if people can't get back to work and start earning a living to pay their bills. And I'm a supporter of getting back to work. And I will address Silver Rock and Montage and Pendry. Let's see. If you want me to do that now, I'm happy to do that now. There was a question regarding, giving an update on the status of the Montage and Pendrys, as well as the park moving forward. So Silver Rock is now open again as a golf course, and it does have those restrictions. The first 2 weeks, we restricted it to residents only who had the resident card. And again, we didn't want to all of a sudden encourage outside travel to the area for golf, because technically there shouldn't be any place for them to stay, right? If we have no rentals or hotels, except for essential. And we are still operating the golf course, and then the park event venue that's really at the front gates of Silver Rock, that is still underway. We had some excessive damage because of the rains that we've had to do some repairs, but that actually is still moving forward, and we're allowed to do that construction under this pandemic and declaration of emergency. As for the Pendry and the Montage, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that's being done by the developer Robert Green right now, and the financing group Mosaic is still extremely excited about the projects. While we expect it to be starting vertical probably now, that will be pushed back just a few months. But there's been no change in the design plans, the format, the number of rooms. That is still a project moving forward that, based on the financing group and the developer, and actually the Montage International, their perspective is there'll still be a component of leisure travel that will be available in that high discretionary spend area, because even in the worst of times, those with a lot of money still have a lot of money, it seems, and they may be buying up the foreclosed homes, who knows? But those plans are still moving forward, because that still is a revenue source that we're planning on as far as property tax, hotel tax, sales tax for the future for La Quinta's financial stability.
And for the stability of the city,
yes,
you and Indio especially are very dependent on Coachella and Stagecoach. What is your prediction as far as them bringing the concerts back in October?
I personally don't think the October concerts are going to happen. And I say that from looking at the numbers, listening to Newsom, listening to County Public Health Officer Dr. Kaiser, and their need to have certain data points in place testing, tracing, herd immunity, vaccinations, antibody testing. I don't think we're going to get there in that type of a large gathering by October, the way that we're going now. I mean, it'll be May tomorrow, and it just seems to get pushed out and pushed out, and that's devastating. Just between the tennis being canceled and the festivals this spring, and our fiscal year ends June 30th, we're already looking at just over 7 million loss in hotel and sales tax revenue, and those projections will be greater next year. And we didn't even account for an October concert. We just assumed that possibly you'd get something next spring that would come back. So we're being very conservative in our numbers. The good news is our finance team and our financial advisory commission has already taken, pen and pencil and paper to whittle down those one-time expense savings to avoid things, things, whether it's unfilled vacant positions, putting a hold on hiring anybody new, the travel and training that we had already pre-approved for a lot of our staff, because we believe in that training and development is definitely encouraged by the council and leadership in the city, so that we can advance our team to a number of projects that can be put out a little further. For example, and Jeff, you might like this, there's a roundabout that was planned right outside of the Hideaway, because that would be the grand entrance to the Montage and Pendry. And the goal was that was going to be done before the end of this year. Just because of the timing of the hotel construction, we're able to push that out a little bit now and save that money. It's still on the capital improvement plan, but it won't be advanced right away. So we have probably out of that, say, 7.5 million. We're about a 2.5 million shortfall in what we've come up with savings to make up for that. And we can pull that 2.5, 2.7 from our reserves and still do the 1.5 million in the loan and still have some reserve money to spare. So not to say that we're flush, but we have been very conservative over the years. Our team has developed an economic disaster reserve fund, and we are utilizing it in this economic disaster, and still being conservative, but wanting to make sure that our streets and roads are maintained, getting those big projects done where people aren't driving around as much, so that when we come out of this, we are still in a position to help our businesses, our residents. We still have a very beautiful city. The quality is there, and we just have to help advance what we'll now see as just a really, really spiraled recession.
Did you mention how much is in the reserves?
I believe it's in that particular bucket. I believe there's 11 million. I can confirm that, but I'm thinking there was 11 million on that. I don't have my chart in front of me.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. So there's another comment here regarding the Zoom meeting with Assemblyman Chad Mays that was hosted by the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce yesterday, which I missed, but I've been talking to Chad quite a bit. And Chad was asked who has the ultimate say to open things, county and city opening golf courses and beaches until today's announcement to close all beaches. Right, so the hierarchy becomes the governor, then the county, and then the city. And again, we can't choose to open something unless the county says we can, and the county can't open something unless the governor says they can. So, that's why we had received word that county was going to be doing the golf course thing, because that happened to be a leak to the media. It wasn't quite in their plans right away, but it was going to happen sometime that week. And we called an emergency meeting because under this emergency declaration, the beauty is we can call council meetings within an hour's notice under the rules and regulations. And so we can quickly then make our decisions to modify our executive orders so that we can free up that play for our residents in short order. In terms of for example, Orange County, they are approving that they're reopening with safety guidelines. I have to watch to see how that works, because I asked the question to our city attorney, if we were to say we're opening up, we'll do safety, distancing, masks, etc., but we're open for business, what would happen? And it's obviously that's a legal question, and we could get sued by the county, we can get sued by the state, but more importantly, while we don't want to waste money on legal battles, they could cut off funding to us. They can cut off highway funding, tax funding. They can cut off a lot of things to the city just because. And we don't want that to occur. So we actually just yesterday I helped author a letter that was signed by Desert Hot Springs Mayor, Indio, Indian Wells, and La Quinta, to push to the county supervisor, Manny Perez, as well as Dr. Cameron Kaiser, to say we want the county's plan and date on reopening, because we want to be ready, and we're prepared to do that now. Tomorrow, we will be sending a letter that will also include, hopefully, Palm Desert. Their council meeting is today, and it will include Assemblyman Chad May's signature that pushes up to the governor saying, we have seen your phased approach. We want a date certain on when this will happen, because we believe we are a unique sub-region of Riverside County. We have a lower population during the summer months because of our seasonal snowbird component. And this is a perfect time for us to phase in and reallocate how we do business, whether it's the restaurants, whether it's distancing in stores. I mean, we're doing it in Costco and grocery stores and Lowe's and Home Depot. Those rules should apply in everything else as well. We support not doing large gatherings yet, really connective sports teams, big events, movie theaters, some of those things that are still very concentrated. We support delaying those a little bit, but we're ready to open in a safe way. And for those people who want to continue to shelter because they feel that's the right thing to do, they have every right to do that. But as soon as Palm Desert approaches this letter and gets consensus from their council, they will also be a signator on it, and we're hoping to send that up tomorrow morning to the governor. And it's really about hearing from our residents and our businesses saying, we may not be able to recover from this, and we've got to start getting some income in some way, shape, or form. And just hearing about a date in the future that isn't even existent right now is not enough. And so we're just trying to push instead of waiting for it to happen.
There's a question regarding social distancing and wearing masks in public. Is the city
Yes.
any enforcement measures to discourage people who are not following the rules?
Right. So for a while, there was a time where, well, y'all saw, our sheriff of Riverside County that contracts with many of our cities that basically says, we're not going to enforce it. And we were a little disturbed by that. We spend $18 million a year in the city of La Quinta to have our police do this. And while we don't want to ninny-nat mask wearing, we recognize that if we were asked to do something for a short period of time, and remember, folks, this was can we do this for 2 weeks in shelter? And now it's 7+ weeks, and people are going stir crazy. We have helped lower the numbers. We did not have a surge like New York has experienced, thank God. And I don't anticipate we will, but we need to learn to coexist with COVID. So based on the extension of the county health officer's orders, the expectation going forward after tomorrow is that, you should have a mask when you're outside, but if you're running, hiking, walking, and not around anybody except for the person that you're with that you probably live with anyway, you can have your mask down. When you're playing golf, you can have your mask down. It's still, when you encounter that person, there should be 6 feet of distance, and respectfully, you should put that mask up when you're doing the passing. That's for outdoor activities. I would say things like your doctor's offices, your shopping, anytime you're interacting in that closer proximity indoors and in engaging things, those will still have mask requirements. As far as enforcement, what we have done is we're handing out educational flyers to say these are the rules, and we would hope to follow them. And as a hiker, I'm wearing it as I walk up. When I get away from people, I pull it down. When I'm passing people, I'll pull it up. And for those that don't wear one at all, that's okay for them, but they're putting the people they pass at risk. And it's just a respect component of just saying, let's all stop the shed, but still have a life, because it is difficult climbing a hill when you're breathing your own air. And we recognize with the extreme heats that we've got to find a balance. So we're not ticketing non-mask people. We're trying to continue to educate and encourage that. So what's my thoughts on Mathis Brothers being open? They had a great plan in terms of how they were doing the distancing and process, but the reality is they bucked the system because their attorneys thought they could, and it wasn't fair for any other furniture store. Yet their argument was Target sells furniture, Walmart sells furniture and clothing, and how is that fair? Well, that's their model, and unfortunately you're able to buy something in a Target or a Walmart because it's also in a grocery store. So I supported not having that open, since, again, I couldn't come to my La Quinta business saying it's okay for you to be open, because that wasn't aligned with the rules. So they are not now open, I don't believe. I think they did go back and we're closed down by the county. But that's a business that, again, if we have the right process in place and everybody can play in the same field, let's open it up respectfully and with the mask, with the distancing, and shop what you need to shop. Yeah, the mask requirements is basically, that's a question saying there's a lot of confusion on mask requirements. County order basically says anytime you leave your house, you should have one on. I don't think you need one on when you're driving a car because it's only you in the car. And I don't think you need one if you're the only one in a park. But again, it's when you're around other people. The right thing to do is at least have one around your neck, because there's so many people I still see that just have no regard for it at all. And that's a personal choice. For those that don't feel comfortable passing people without a mask, it's either you wear yours or you stay home. But the requirement, and according to the governor as well, is when you leave your home, you should have that mask on. I'll tell you, in the hospital, in my office here, I can wear no mask, but as soon as I walk out of my office anywhere around the hospital and I'm non-patient care, we have to wear masks. Anybody coming into the hospital, which is very limited, must have a mask on. So most retailers are doing that now because that is the requirement. I'll share with you, my husband works for the Home Depot in Rancho Mirage, and there have been almost police calls because they do have a policy that says if you come into the store, you should be wearing a mask. Finally, they did that. He felt more exposed working there as an essential worker than I do feel in the hospital. I felt very safe here. And people would, beg their constitutional rights and drag me out. And it became a huge issue, not only with the employees requesting this of customers, but other customers calling out customers coming in for their own protection. So I really think people are getting a little stir crazy, and I understand that. We have to find a balance. I believe that we are going to be coexisting with COVID for a long time. There will always be, there's only about 10 or 12 patients in the hospital now versus 20 or 30, and it's just going to be the norm. And we've got to recognize that we're doing other business. It's okay to come to the emergency room. It's okay to call 911 if you're having a heart attack or a stroke. And we're seeing now a feared delay in care because we were, sharing that people should stay home if they don't have to be here because we're trying to treat COVID. The cases is we're managing it just like we would with pneumonia or some other disease that's coming through, or MRSA or TB, and we have segregated care, and we need to start feeling comfortable about moving on with our lives, with or without your preference of a mask or sheltering in place. All right, did I get all of these?
There's a question regarding La Quinta residents encouraged to participate in the free testing.
Yeah. So here's the thing on testing, because I worked the drive-through testing sites when it was at the Southwest Community Church parking lot. Our network helped with the county and some local healthcare clinics to do this. So I was more on the organization, calling to remind people, getting them through the line, et cetera. And we had clinicians doing the swabbing. That is still, and they're still doing that for free. There's 844 appointments on the books today for the Indio Fairgrounds drive-through site. So they're opening up to anybody who's symptomatic or not. If I go today and I have no symptoms, the likelihood is I'm going to get a negative test, and they're not doing the antibody test. They're still just doing the COVID test. But if I come down with a fever tomorrow and start coughing and I get tested tomorrow, chances are I could be positive tomorrow. So it is a moment in time for that particular test. And so in the beginning, when we were encouraging those that had traveled, exposed, symptomatic, we are trying to harvest those positives so we can start getting the numbers we need to not just look at this many people are in the hospital, because it's a very, very small percentage compared to the entire population. So if, my goal is if when we get an antibody test that's accurate and FDA approved, that will really tell us whether or not we've had COVID, because there's a likelihood that we're all carrying it and or might have had a bout of it, just like the flu, but it didn't constitute getting into the hospital or the ICU or on a ventilator. That will be good information for us to know, because then that's that herd immunity of, hey, we can all be walking around positive. That doesn't mean, we have to be distanced or we don't necessarily need to wear a mask. It'll be the next progression of we're kind of living with this without having really serious health implications, except of course for those that are perhaps of age or immunocompromised in other matters. So what I encourage you, feel free. I mean, it's free. If you want to call the drive-through number, that number is 800-945-6171. They do require an appointment, but they'll get you in and give you, it's free. And LabCorp processes the test within 3 to 5 days. You'll get a call with the results. And if that's a peace of mind thing for that period of time, you're welcome to do that. As we get more testing options on the antibodies and we want to know what our community is like, we may want to encourage more residents to do that. Let me revisit the short-term rental restrictions. When do you foresee there being a return to less than 30 days? Also, Legacy Villas and La Quinta only permit rentals of less than 30 days. Is there an exception for that owner to consider? I believe, so let's see, visiting, when do you think there'll be a return? I think when we hear more about the ability to travel, I guess, for recreational purposes. One of the challenges is the hotels are chomping at the bit, that they still want to have some type of leeway or exception for the Memorial Day weekend. Yet until pools are more than one person per pool, which we can address that because I think that's ludicrous, and or spas are open again or something, at least there's golf. For people to go to a vacation, they could sit around a pool without getting in it, but there's not still a lot to do if the restaurants aren't able to be dined at, et cetera. So I wouldn't think that our short term is going to be released in La Quinta before the June 19th governor date that he's got for some of the other barriers. I will circle back. My understanding, we had a discussion about Legacy Villas, which is kind of a unique component there. And I believe we went to 60 days on that. I know that there's a rule that says 30, but we were giving the option of a minimum of 60 days for that. It has to do with, they have an in lieu fee, and because it's similar to the Cordonese property, they have an in lieu fee, and we weren't going to waive the in lieu fee, but we would allow longer term stays there at 60 days or more. Robin, I'll circle back with that and get you and Justin the information so that you can send that out.
That would be great.
Okay.
And we really appreciate your time today. Justin, there was still another question or two. Can you complete this meeting? I'm late for a 10:30.
And I want to address Robin, thank you so much for the intro and for coordinating. And
Oh, sure.
I'll answer a couple more questions if that's okay. I understand if you have to sign out, that's great.
Bye.
Okay. So on the one pool per person restriction, so again, I think what was happening is the county was feeling a lot of pressure with the heat that golf came back. So now what about swimming pools? And so I honestly believe there's a little bit of spite saying, sure, we'll let you use a pool if there's only one person in the pool. I have sent a letter or an email, at least not really formal, but because of my hospital job, I interact quite a bit with the county health officer, and we're Zooming on meetings and doing data sharing and all that. I did send Supervisor Perez and Dr. Kaiser an email saying, okay, we've made it a week with your one person per pool restriction, and the feedback that I'm getting from my residents is this is ridiculous. If it's a husband and wife with a 2-year-old and technically only one person can be at the pool, it doesn't make sense. So it's do we do the golf cart rule? It's single person, or if it's a family that lives in the same household, or if it's a large enough pool in these community areas, do we do separate entrances? Do we allow the private country clubs who have the manpower to potentially monitor that better and have the wipe downs of the chairs, et cetera? It's really about those high touch services versus actual water, because there's no transmission of COVID in the water based on the CDC protocols. You have to have a certain amount of chlorine and parts per million in terms of the chemicals, but for all intents and purposes, you can't transmit in the water. It's all the things that you're touching around the pool that could be problematic. But there's been input that I've received on things like the rinse of the shower before you return to your home if you're in a community pool, and why can't you do that? Those are things that I've pushed forward, saying we really probably should revisit this, and we don't want huge, we're not opening Fritz Burns Park pool yet, because we want to work with our contract provider to determine how best to appropriate people in that pool setting in larger groups, since we're still not allowed to do large gatherings over 10 anyway. So I think that there should be a reasonable factor of a family can be at one end and or another end if it's all the same depth, and you can keep your distance just like you would in a park or in a trail. I'd love your feedback though. So if you want to put any comments that you like that or something else in the chat, I'll take that into consideration if I get feedback from the county. What are your thoughts on reopening? My feeling is I'm really proposing a balance. I'm not proposing that we're putting people's lives in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form, but I'm also working on the healthcare side, and I'm seeing what we're seeing internally in the hospital. And the reality is, if you've heard that hospitals are furloughing employees and they're half full than they normally are, that is absolutely true. That has impacted all of the hospitals here in the Valley. And we're now looking at how do we restart elective surgeries that are closer to medical necessity. There was never a mandate not to, but it was a mandate that you must have the proper PPE, personal protective equipment, to treat COVID. So you can't be doing a lot of other types of surgeries or plastic surgeries that will consume large amounts of PPE, because then they wouldn't be available for those COVID patients. So, the hospitals have successfully monitored that equipment. We have access to those. We didn't hit the surge that we anticipated. And so it's okay. It's again, re-educating, saying, don't be afraid to come to the hospital. We've got segregated areas. We've got segregated entrances. You're required to wear a mask. I mean, everything's wiped down. These places are so clean. It's incredible that we need to apply those same standards to our restaurants, our small businesses. I mean, really, when you look at a Kohl's or a Marshall's or a Ross, you're never seeing the crowds that you see at Costco or at Home Depot during this pandemic, or even the grocery store lineups and fighting for toilet paper and cleaning products. You can do the spaciousness. You can do a certain amount of people inside the building based on the size of that building. There are ways to do this safely. And those are things that we're trying to push forward instead of waiting for the governor to say, this is when we're ready. Unfortunately, we do have to wait, but if we keep our voice heard, saying we have people that want to go back to work, that want to make a living, that don't want to lose their homes, that's kind of that's our position. La Quinta, by the way, did not take the eviction notice beyond what the governor had indicated, and did not apply that to commercial properties either. And the reason being is we felt that as soon as you say you gotta buy for 90 days on paying your rent, then we've got landlords that aren't getting their money, and we've got landlords that are still obligated to make their payments, and that simply is just not fair. So we did not take the stance that some of the other cities like Palm Springs and Coachella and Cathedral City did. Our feeling is we allowed what the governor allowed, but we're not going beyond that, because again, we've got landlords and property owners that still have bank loans to pay, and there's still a lot of them are local residents, and we have to treat those fairly. How are we doing, Justin?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, we're doing good. Do you want to talk about anything else, or let me just kind of, we've had you for over 30 minutes, so I don't want to keep you for too much longer. So let me just have you kind of give us some closing remarks, just, kind of about the city, or anything you want to kind of talk about that you didn't cover, and then we're just going to wrap it up from there.
Great.
So.
Thank you so much. And I can go on, I apologize. There was a quick question about local farmers. We have maintained, although this last weekend was our last Sunday, we had maintained our farmers market in Old Town, and a lot of pushback on that one. We've got some extremists that are, how can you do that? This is compromising health. And I'd refer back to essential services. They were only counting 50 people in. They were spacing out their booths. They were providing hand washing stations. It was very well organized, and really an added service for people who needed to be outside, because you're probably, again, less contagious outside to catch something than you would be in a grocery store. But nonetheless, that we're trying to support the local farmers that way. There are some revisions that are coming out from the county on essential. They should be coming out today. We got the red line version a day or so ago, and it does allow a little bit more activity for agricultural industry. So that's positive. I've sent that off to Prime Time as a forewarning or optimistic approach to being able to get some things going again. I would say overall, the city of La Quinta continues to try to educate. Our website has a dedicated coronavirus section. We are working on the small business loans. We have coordinated with the Chamber of Commerce on free banners for businesses that are open, either takeout delivery or open for business, so that we can show our support and allow them to have those tools available to continue to operate. We're doing our best to assist them with guidance on the SBA loans or any other point that's available. I'll tell you, we're on calls constantly between EMS, other cities, county calls, there's White House calls, and then of course on my healthcare side, I'm doing a ton of those on the hospital data points that I'm able to bring back to La Quinta. So I'm balancing the data that we're seeing on the health standpoint, which is what the county health officer is driving, and trying to use those to help support why we want to reopen things, because we're seeing that flattening. We're able to incrementally do that safely and engage that. And for those people who want to stay home, they can. And I just want to encourage people and say thank you to the residents. Thank you to the Realtor Group for abiding by the restrictions that have been put in place. I know you all have an extra 4 or 5 forms now, COVID forms that you have to do, and God bless you. But it's a team effort. It takes a village. We have had a great community to support this. We've had a lot of feedback, and it's not necessarily a win-win, but we have to persevere, and financially we will be able to do that. It's going to take our community a long, long time, and we just want to be there as best we can to ensure that we're there to help if we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Evans, for taking the time to speak to our members. Really appreciate it. And thank you everybody that attended, and hope you guys all have a good day.
And yeah, feel free to contact me or reach me if you need to via email or cell phone. Jeff can send out the cell phone number. It's 760-899-3279. Feel free to text or call me or ask questions. I try to make myself available 24/7. I do have long work days between the 2 jobs, but nonetheless, I will get back to you. So thank you. Thank you very much for zooming in.
And thank you again,
Justin.
Mayor. Thank you again, Mayor Evans.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.